So I would say my name is Ross Harrison. So it's Rossharrison. And as a child, we had to learn it on both hands because sometimes your right hand is busy. So it would be this hand. And it's kind of strange because I can do it. I do his practice on both hands at the same time. But that's how it is. So it's really my name. It's very formal. In the deaf home, my home, we have shortcuts. And my father to my mother was Jack, and my mother was Dora. And then up the line there was Ralph, and there was John, and then there was Ross. But sometimes it got B for the baby. So that's kind of how we were doing it. So if my mom was talking to me, she'd say, she would use the sign. It's much faster. Well, I was born in 1948, Brantford, Ontario, in a hallway. Because it was the baby boom. And so my mother went into labor, and so I was always nicknamed the hallway baby. Well, growing up in a deaf household as a child is really not anything different because I had nothing to compare it to. But, as you get around the age, I got around the age 4 or 5, and I started going to other kids' homes. I realized, well, gee, my parents are different. And communication, the things we did. And plus, we spoke home sign, not an official ASL, but a home sign that happens in the home. I grew up with discrimination, hearing people say things about them, calling them deaf and dumb, being turned away for service because people didn't understand that. They always went out with pads of paper and pens in order to write to the hearing world. At the age of 10, we moved to Brantford. We had actually lived in the country. And I met my best friend at the age of 10. The very day, actually, we moved in, there was a knock on the side door. And I knew instantly, without question, that this was somebody like me. And we were friends for our whole life from that day forward. So it was a wonderful experience because I saw the world differently with a hearing person, with a hearing family, and it opened a lot of doors for me. My first friend, really. I would describe myself as reserved, sometimes guarded, very gentle. I pick up garbage on the street. I think if I met me, I'd like me. Like I would say, this is somebody with a good soul. That's what I would say. I was 24. And compared to where I moved from, there was a gay scene, actually quite active compared to today. There was a lot of bars and clubs to go to. But I was sharing an apartment with my best friend, and we were extremely protective of each other, and we'd always got into a pattern of exploring everything together. So we would go out together and we'd come home together. We had a 2-bedroom, but we always slept together because we liked being together. And very quickly, I think it was the first year, we met, Greg actually met a friend, became a friend, and he introduced him to me to see if he was okay. He had to be introduced, and we kind of did that pattern until we kind of started to break out. And then we lived together for 4 years, and I moved out. He called it the big divorce. And then we started living our own individual lives, but always connected, always connected. Greg died in 1992 of AIDS. I'm not sure at the exact year, but I used to read the Globe and Mail when I went into work in the morning, and there was a little article that said gay cancer in New York City. And so I called Greg, and the first time we'd ever heard about it. Not to worry about it, it's in New York, it's not in Canada. And that was kind of actually the attitude within the gay population. Well, if they're not from the States, you're safe. But we didn't know. And I think that would have been 1981. There wasn't even a name for it. So we weren't really that scared, but as the years went on, towards 84 and 85, it became a reality that it was here in Toronto. And there really wasn't much support except for the Hassle-Free Clinic did a lot. And the PWA clinic sprung forth. They provided money and food for people. And people started to get ill. And I had started doing support care as a volunteer at Casey House, and I specifically asked for support care because I like to take care. You noticed it because when you went into a bar, you would see a friend and you thought, oh my God, like what happened? I just saw him 2 weeks ago and he looked well. Immediate weight loss, scared look to the face. And then you'd hear, oh, they died. The Body Politic started doing a bi-weekly run in remembrance. So it was like we all rushed to get the newspaper to see who had died. And a lot of people, there was no notification, but we would, word of mouth was always very strong back then. There was a sense of community, though. There was a sense of everybody pulling together, helping each other. Greg lived in my home for most of the time. He did not want to go back to his apartment. I had another friend that died 12 days after Greg, and he lived in the house. So it was kind of comforting. We were helping each other. You just do it. You just go into an overdrive. You do what you have to do. July of 2018, went to a doctor just for a routine check. He actually accidentally checked the PSA test. I saw him after. He said, well, your PSA is up at 5. I said, well, I didn't understood what it meant. And he said, well, let's do an examination. He said, everything seems fine. He said, I think it's prudent to wait 3 months. Now we're in September, and the PSA goes up to 9. And then he tells me in the same breath, well, I'll refer you, but just understand that it can take 3 months to get into a urologist, which kind of floored me. So now we're into January. When you start off in your prostate cancer journey, there's a lot of terms that are thrown out to you that you have absolutely no idea what it means. And then I heard nothing else. I didn't understand one thing. I just went into like deaf, totally deaf. My journey through the prostate cancer was alone. I never asked anybody to come with me. I never took notes. These are things that are mistakes. And I figured that I could do it all on my own because I've been doing it all on my own my whole life. I'll be fine. But it's a difficult journey, and it goes fast. There's a lot of information thrown at you. Lots of tests. Immediately you're having radiation. You're on androgen deprivation therapy. The side effects, they don't really, the only side effect I was told was you may have hot flashes, and it's hard on the heart. And I went, heart? That was it. They left out, you're going to lose your body hair, that you're going to have your testicles shrink, that you're never going to get an erection again. while you're on the therapy, your whole manhood is erased. As a gay man going to Princess Margaret, I got the feeling it was homophobic. There just didn't seem to be any language ever used, whether I was asked whether I had a partner or not, or a best friend. And the majority of the group that I saw there were couples, were men and women. I didn't see a gay couple. I can't be the only gay person. So I really felt alone. I think for me, if there had been even as simple as information flyers that identified the LGBT plus community, I would have felt some inclusion, some recognition. I didn't see that. I was never asked anything about my personal life, and yet a friend of mine who I actually met at the Cancer Centre, I'm still friends with, we'll be friends for life, was asked about his wife, was asked about his children, but I was never asked anything. I think seeing rainbow flags, rainbow symbols are a way just of signaling to a person that they're aware. I think it would make a difference. I think yes, it would have made me feel more included. Not necessarily safer, but definitely like included. When you grow up in your whole life of being excluded, you're very aware of when you're not included. And I felt not included. Community is everything to me. I have a very close, strong friendships of my community. It's people I can call on at any time. It's people I can ask for favors, and vice versa. They can call me. So we are in many ways a friend by circumstance, but developed into family friends. It includes birthdays, it includes Christmas, Pride. So we share life experiences. I can talk about prostate cancer. One of the questions that I think a doctor should know or should be able to answer the question is that in the case of whether you had a radical prostatectomy or whether you received radiation, can you still have anal sex? Was my sex life going to look like after as I withdraw from androgen deprivation therapy? I'm not going to have, the erection I used to do. What is the length of time for that? Is there something that can help me get there faster? Those are real questions that I do not feel comfortable asking any oncologist that I deal with right now at Princess Margaret that question. If I were to speak to a medical student who was going to be an oncologist, I would try to tell them to slow down a bit in terminology, to ask whether any of the terminology that was used is understood. How are you feeling? How are you dealing with this on a personal level? Do you go home alone? Are you okay? Those are I think those caring type of questions would really make a difference. The one thing I would change is that after you've completed your treatment, the feeling is that have a nice day, have a good life, we'll see you. You're sort of dropped. And I guess in the big picture that is actually good news, because it doesn't mean that you need, more one-on-one care. But it's quite drastic. It's just like overnight you're just sort of you're dropped. No one ever asked me whether I needed to have a therapist to talk to. I had to research that on my own. I think aftercare would be a really good idea.